Hey guys, it's Tony Thompson. Welcome back to another episode of Chasing Excellence. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Chasing Excellence. I'm Tony Thompson, your host. I'm excited to have with me today my guest, Alec Conrad, who's a broker owner of Carolina Mortgage Advisors. He's a co-broker owner, Carolina Mortgage Advisors from Charlotte, North Carolina. CLT is in the house. Alec, thanks for joining me today.
Tony, thank you for having me. I'm excited. Let's get it going, baby.
Absolutely. Before we get started, since I used to live in Charlotte, great city. I love visiting that place because, again, that's actually where I started my mortgage career. Is in Charlotte, North Carolina, back in the day. But I gotta ask, you're in Charlotte, so does that mean you are a Panther fan, or who's your team, Alec?
Man, I hate to say it. I love the Panthers, but I'm a fair weather fan. So I grew up in Cleveland. I moved to Charlotte 15 years ago. And I grew up a Browns fan. So if anybody knows anything about football, it's about the saddest thing you could possibly say, besides being maybe a Dallas Cowboys fan. Besides that, Browns, man. It's rough. But, I still root for the Brownies. I still root for the Panthers. But, I don't know. I'm kind of in the in-between where I don't really have a good team. So growing up in Ohio, I'm always going to root for the Buckeyes, So it's just how it goes.
There we go. Great. Well, again, co-managing broker owner of Carolina Mortgage Advisors. You're in Charlotte, North Carolina. First of all, let's just jump into the Carolina Mortgage Advisors. I mean, I know you're in Carolina, so how'd you come up with the name?
Yeah. So the origin story is always something funny, for everybody. Something bad turns into something good, right? And so I'm 50% owner in Charlotte. I have my business partners in Raleigh. It's Mike Alberico. A lot of people know Mike. He's a high producer, really well known in the industry. And we actually met at our prior brokerage where we were basically stumbling through some roadblocks with both having pretty large branches at our prior company. And so we sort of merged the branches together. We liked working with each other. We, got good, my strengths are his weaknesses and vice versa. Really good interaction. And through the trials and tribulations of our prior employer, we're like, you know what? Let's open up our own shop. And we did. 30 days later, Carolina Mortgage Advisors came into existence. North Carolina, South Carolina is our major focus. We are expanding to a couple other states now, which kind of violates the name Carolina Mortgage Advisors, But ultimately, it was, good. But some bad stuff is really what was the major momentum for us to open our own brokerage. And so it's the classic story of bad turns into good and all things works out.
Great.
Hard work pays off. It just all worked out.
Great. One of the things I love hearing is just how people come up with the names of their companies or to a certain extent, even how they got into the industry. And so, I always like to say we all have a story about how we got into the mortgage industry. Alec, what's your story?
All right. So I don't come from mortgages. Some people just happen to fall into it and they've done it for a million years. So my background is actually very data focused, mergers and acquisitions. And so, my little, my whole story is that basically I have, at that point in time, 8, 9, 10 years ago, I was traveling a lot for work, doing mergers and acquisitions, flying to New Jersey, Ohio, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, and always gone. And I remember, my son's 2.5, 3 years old. I remember I've got full custody of my son. I've never been married. It was kind of one of those situations, but I have the ownership of the situation, but a little bit unique for me. Anyways, I'm in LA. I'm having breakfast. I'm FaceTiming my son. He goes, "Daddy, why are you so far away all the time?" I was like, you know what? You're right. I shouldn't be. And 3 months later, I canceled my contract with a very, very, very large company that paid me very, very well. And I got into mortgages. And I made zero money for the first year. It was kind of ridiculous, but it's become my persona. And so, with my unique situation, having my son, he's articulate and cute, and we've got a great relationship. I love being a dad. And I sort of became the persona of, loan officer, but also Cooper's dad. And so I used to bring him with me to open houses. A lot of my realtor partners have met Cooper over and over and over again. And I'll even have people say, well, I'll show up to something by myself, like, oh, where's Cooper? As if he's fully expected. He's 11 now, as if it's fully expected that I'm bringing my little buddy because everybody loves him, and I'm Cooper's dad. So I have this funny story where I used to do a lot of open houses. Not as much anymore, but we used to do a lot of open houses. Bring Cooper, and I would follow up with a client or prospect or whatever. I would call them and say, hey, it's Alec. You were at ABC house on Saturday. We met you. We talked about doing some buy before you sell programs. And they're like, who? I'm like, hey, oh, it's Cooper's dad. They're like, oh yeah, Cooper's dad. What's up, man? And that was my persona for a long time. It's my social media. I like being a dad. I like traveling. I like, playing video games and playing sports and hanging out. And it's just been a fun way to, bring work and business, let's just say life and business all kind of into one. Otherwise, this industry, eats you alive if you don't have fun like doing it.
Well, there's something called NIL, and I think Cooper may be owed some back pay, man. And his name,
he's on payroll now.
I'm just saying, Alex.
Yeah, he's on payroll now. We opened the company looking for creative tax strategies. All of our kids are on payroll. They do play a portion of our marketing. They're part of it. He's rocking the CMA hat.
Yeah. Hey, name, image, and likeness, man. Even for the kids. So, I love that story, man. I love that story. So let's talk a little bit about your business, man. First and foremost, you've done a great job of growing that business. First year not making any money. First of all, that's beating the odds. Most people would have dropped out. And that's what Chasing Excellence is about, is the journey, the pursuit of excellence, the commitment and the passion to be successful. And so, you produce at a high level. And, when you think about this industry, what do you see as one of the biggest challenges from where you sit today in the industry?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge we have today is probably just there's so much stuff happening in our industry, and everybody wants to just focus on all the other things that are happening. And what made you money and what got you, your foot in the door, what got you involved with clients, what gave them a good experience 5-10 years ago is the same thing that gives them good experience today. Closing on time, communicating, doing all the basics, that'll never go away. Yet people want to sit here and talk about what's happening in the headlines, and Rocket bought this company and this company's buying a servicer, and the whole world's changing, and it is a little bit, but the best things in life are the interpersonal relationships you have with your realtor referral partners, and doing a good job with your clients and getting the repeat referrals and all that stuff. And so people take their eye off the ball. And I think using ChatGPT or Claude is probably the best example, where I have friends that they move brokerages a lot. They spend all day messing around with Claude and ChatGPT, but they don't call their clients to check in on them and see how they're doing and offer to do an IRL.
Wow.
Right? So I think that's the most important thing, is that you just got to take the blinders and put them on and focus on the things that make you money, that make your business better, that make your life better. And yeah, there's time for all that stuff, but you can't do all the other junk first and then say, oh, I guess it's 4:30 on a Friday, I should call some clients.
Yeah, love that.
That's been from day one. That's the number one thing. And it sucks, eating your frogs, first
thing in the morning. First thing in the morning, got to eat that frog. And so, we're going to talk a little bit about, you mentioned one of your secret sauces that we talked about earlier, and we're going to come back to, one of those passion products that you love and that's helped you been so successful thus far. But you hit something also on the head earlier, where most originators in our industry have a hard time staying focused, as well as a hard time staying what I would call passionate. And so, Alec, as a top producer and a great leader who's growing a brokerage in the Carolinas, what do you do, man, to kind of stay focused and to keep that edge?
I think you really have to look at the business and say, what do I like doing? What do I not like doing? What can I, do to enjoy my day more, and kind of where are our pain points? And I'll just give you an example where last year, since we do a lot of VA loans, we get a lot of calls for VA one-time close construction loans. And it's a good product, and for the right person, it's freaking awesome, but the pull-through rate's very low. And I'll just give you the quick example. People want to buy the land. They want to put a $500,000 house in the middle of nowhere. They want to roll all their closing costs and escrow fees and all their draws into the mortgage. They don't want to pay anything. And it never appraises. There's always issues with it. Our pull-through rate, I think we closed 2 out of 9 last year. And so we identified that that was a huge pain point for us, and that we need to do way more due diligence. And we need to kind of get that off our plate so that we can better serve our other customers. And so I think that the general idea of taking a step back and doing a high level review of what you like, what makes you money, what you're good at, and figuring out how you can do those three things really, really, really well, and not do the things that you don't do well and just try to force it. The whole square, hole, round, cube, kind of, or round, whatever that is. And it's the same thing with like some of the down payment assistance programs that are available within Charlotte, specifically within my area where all the banks are, all the grant programs and all that. And just don't beat your head against the door and try to do something that doesn't work. Just make a great referral and move on. And then you can focus on really helping the people that you're excellent at, and not trying to become excellent at everything. And that's one quick little side note about the broker channel, is that people have access to all these programs, and all of a sudden they want to be able to offer everything to everybody. And yeah, within a certain amount of scale, that's okay. But you'll find as you grow, the volume, when you're spending 15% of your time on one loan, and you could have been spending all this extra time on all the other stuff because you're learning this product and you're not familiar with it, you recognize pretty quickly that that's inhibiting you from growing. You think that one loan's helping you, but it's actually inhibiting you from bigger growth, with other things you could be doing.
Let's stop for a second and unpack that, because I think, Alec, you touched on something that, as I travel across the country, man, and when I'm talking to originators, one of the things that it just disheartens me is sometimes an originator doesn't know when to let go. And because I think it's also that mentality of, hey, I'm a mortgage advisor and therefore I should do everything and know how to do everything, and there's no loan that should be undone. And I tell, the top performing originators that I talk with and I help guide how they look at their business and grow their business. One of the things I remind them is, you will not be the mortgage originator and the mortgage person for every client that comes your way. But I think that's where a lot of originators, man, they miss the opportunity to just move that to the side and take that 15-30 minutes and prospect and get a cleaner, better deal that fits their avatar, their profile.
Oh, 100% hit the nail on the head. And I'll just use a few examples. So at my prior employer, we had some big boys that focus entirely on the VA loan benefit. Entirely. They don't do any other loans. I mean, maybe they might do like a one-off for a veteran, but they don't advertise or anything. And they're closing 100 million a plus year, focusing on one product. So if you're really good at that one thing, you execute a high level and the message gets out and all that great stuff, you can do very well. I think you can make money and help a lot of people in this industry through different ways. But at a certain point, you have to have a come to Jesus, look at your business, at your life, what makes you happy, healthy. And you got to draw those lines that, I could do this, but they're probably better served elsewhere. And I'll just use a good example where, for me personally, in Charlotte, where it's a very, very, very competitive market, land purchase and construction loans are very popular. We're not strong with that in the broker channel. I refer a lot of that stuff out to AG South Credit Union. Down payment assistance, we don't have access to a lot of big grants that some of the banks do. I have a contact at half the banks here, be like, hey, you should call this person at First National Bank because they're offering something that you probably work with. And maybe they don't, but either way, I'm better serving them by not taking the loan on and being selfish with it. And, just that also makes my life better too, because I'm then focusing on my core business that makes me, ultimately, help more people, but then make more money as a business owner.
No, I love it. I love the attitude. So here's a nugget for the audience. And whenever I see opportunities, I call those nuggets. Take a step back and ask yourself, what are you really focused on? What do you really want to go deep in your business today? And dedicate your time, energy, and effort to being the best at that. Let's talk about, we talked earlier about challenges in our industry, but what do you see, Alec, as an opportunity?
So opportunity, I think it's so interesting because there's so much stuff happening and people are really just like, they're looking left and looking right, but the opportunity is almost always right in front of you. There are such wonderful tools available. And I don't know if I'm allowed to shout out the vendors or not, but are
Go
you
for
okay?
it, man. All
All
good.
right. Yeah. So we use Redder, RETR, Real Estate Tracking Record. It's a fantastic tool to look up realtor production, loan officer production, the relationships between lenders and realtors. And there is no reason that you can't sit there for 20 minutes on one Monday morning and put together a hit list. Ooh, that sounds bad. An ideal partnership potential list, right?
We're in
Of
sales.
realtors that produce at a decent amount that don't look like they have a dedicated lender partner. You know, the Redder has been a great opportunity for us to identify who we should and should not be spending our time with, because that's also part of that too. But I mean, from an opportunity standpoint, I don't think you're ever going to say this education presentation to a realtor firm, this value add that I'm able to offer was not well received. It's always going to be that. And it's always going to be that way. And you just, maybe calling like a Redfin agent maybe might be a little bit tough today or something like that. But ultimately, that opportunity is there, and you just can't get in your own way and say, "Oh, these things are happening. I can't make any more money. The market's falling apart. My margins are too high. The market's too hard." All that mentality just ruins it. And I know a lot of people, and us included, that are having our best years ever because we're just focusing on the basics and just executing at a high level.
Well, and to that end, let's talk about, one of your secret sauces. You are what I call a VA expert, VA guru. You do, to your point, you're a broker, and you do a lot of different products and programs, but it seems like over the last several years, you've become really a craftsman at VA. And so how important is it to find something to become really great at and then go deep in that?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about like high level, VA loans are what, 6, 7, 8% of the total industry's mortgage volume. To focus on that as my main value add to realtors would be, in theory, career suicide. I also don't live near a military base. Active duty service members are not a big part of what I do. But the whole point of that thing is that if you're really good at something, you become the expert for it, and you are consistent with that messaging for quite some time, it can and will make you the the person that gets referred out all the time. So I started this back in 2018. I joined Military Mortgage Boot Camp, which is a VA advocacy like education group, and their whole thing was teaching classes to realtors, teaching classes to veterans, and basically just like kind of coming through as a thought leader in the VA space. So I was teaching classes to realtors in 2018, 2019, having originated 2 VA loans. But I studied the product. I learned about the product. I had people who could help me with the product. My company was strong in VA, so I had all the support there to execute. And just from there, one class with 10 realtors, and one class with 12 realtors, one class with 4 realtors, one class with 30. It just kind of snowballs and adds up to the point of where I was at almost like just under 1,000 realtors have taken my VA class in the greater Charlotte area, and about 100 veterans. We went for the VA hospital in Salisbury a couple of times. But finding a value add way to get your foot in the door, and it's so non-intrusive. If their current lender isn't a VA expert, then you're not like elbowing them and shove them to the side. You're coming as a value add. In fact, I will even offer to invite the in-house lender or their preferred lender to our class so they can kind of see what we do, and they can learn something too, because what we teach is in depth and it's really helpful in a lot of real world examples. But I've been doing it consistently for a long time, and you can't just pick and choose when you want to do it. It's got to be a consistent message.
I love the fact that you're leading first with education, even if that means educating your peers. A lot of originators are afraid of the competition because they think it's the competition. And really, this is a big industry. And as I tell people all the time, there's enough business out there for the people who want to be successful to be successful. So you don't have to worry about your competition, because in your particular marketplace, you can own your market and still not own the entire market. And so from that standpoint, I love that philosophy of how you even bring in and say, hey, bring your lender. That's cool. Who knows? You may even pick up a new referral partner. You may, at the end of the day, have someone to say, man, I really like what you're doing, how you pour into your brokerage and your culture. I want to be a part of Carolina Mortgage Advisors. And so I love that concept.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting. A lot of people get pretty defensive sometimes. They don't want to talk about what makes them successful. But some of the highest producing loan officers coach, they teach. And it's the people that, execute these things, and like they're basic things, right? Consistent messaging, consistent videos on social media, calling past clients, giving video, updates or whatever it ends up being, all that stuff. That's all pretty basic. People just don't execute it consistently for years, and the people that execute at a high level make the money. They're the ones that close the volume.
That's the reason why we created Chasing Excellence, was to bring a forum whereby we could just share journeys, we could share trials and tribulations, challenges, as well as what I call the secret sauce. What people are doing out there in the market to elevate their business and elevate their life. Because it's my belief there's more than enough business out there for those who have really a mindset of giving, a growth mindset. You will never ever not run out of business and opportunities if you have a growth mindset.
I got a quick little funny story about that. Last year when we were doing a post mortem, right? Or I guess it was this year, looking at a post mortem for 2025 production. Who are the new realtors? Where did they come from? Who was the introduction point? How can we do more of that in 2026? My number one source of new referral partners were listing agents, because I'm calling them to check in. I'm asking if they have a TC for the transaction. I'm giving them Tuesday updates with everything. And the most basic thing in the world of just sending a quick little update, calling them to say, hey, we're clear to close. Thanks for all the help. Beautiful house. That turns into lunches, that turns into referrals. And that is the most basic thing in the entire world, And so that's just what a great example, right?
It's all about relationship selling, man. It's all about, at the end of the day, we are in the relationship business, and that currency, the most valuable currency, is relationship currency. Alec, I have truly enjoyed our conversation, man. First of all, kudos to what you guys are doing and building at Carolina Mortgage Advisors. That's something great. I can't wait the next time I'm in Charlotte, man, to make sure we
Yeah,
come
man, hit
over
me
and
up.
chop it up a little bit as well. But I never like to leave Chasing Excellence without talking about gratitude. Alec,
Okay.
what are you most grateful for?
I'm really grateful for the partnership that I have with my business partner. That sounds kind of like lovey-dovey, maybe a little weird, but Mike is a very high producer and has been for a very long time, like 100 million plus during the refi boom stuff. The guy's a beast, but the most humble guy in the world. And then him and his wife have a couple, rental properties and businesses that they have together. And so when we merged to create the business, I also basically inherited all of their financial resources, CPA, financial advisor, and all that. And it helped me take, not just like, I didn't take one or two steps up the ladder. I leapt up 6, 7, 8 rungs on a ladder just by having a really good partnership with people that I trust and I care about and love. And so I think that, you talk about relationships all the time. It can be relationships with, referral partners. It can be other people in the industry. But, this relationship that I have with my business partner has made my life better. I'm making more money. I'm closing more deals. I love our business. We're growing. We're going to do 30, 40% more production this year, all that good stuff. And it's all because of the relationship side of the business. And even taking someone we have a lot of spillover in markets. He does loans in Charlotte. I do loans in Raleigh. Never once have we ever had a scuff or anything like that. It's just two guys working hard to make the world better and have a good business and a good life.
Love it. Well, I'm looking forward to having you and Mike back on the show one day together. We'll talk a little bit more about those VA secret sauces and pour some success into helping people to look at their business and their market differently. Alec, thank you for joining me again. I'm Tony Thompson, your host for Chasing Excellence. I look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Take care.
Whatever is necessary.